Hi, I'm going to read a short story of science fiction named Patches of Light. Once in the beginning of each universe, first light shone into the darkness, first light on a predetermined holographic membrane, given a particular course and a destiny moving through a zero-energy vacuum without friction or exogenous relativistic effects, as if it were in free fall, not subject to extra-universal forces. Each brainyverse required a certain surface tension analog for keeping together with orderly coherence. The primordial vacuum state remained so at the pleasure of God, whom one infers was the author of any temporal disequilibria in regard to which an orderly neutral mind field was maintained. Each of the 8 universes had contact with the Spirit of God during the aeons of their life cycles. Each knew the sight of a sun and of stars across the universal depths, reaching through their own particular settings of universal laws to the planets sustaining their existence. All 8 universes were hosts to sentient beings programmed from the beginning to be and become, to live and wonder about the nature of creation, to ask questions concerning the nature of existence and of why it exists at all, and as if it might have meaning. The people of each universe had the opportunity through the Spirit to know it, God. Some were successful at that, even as so many others failed. Many of the latter were content to study mechanics of matter and energy and postulate the existence of all possible universes from self-generating principles. Natural virtual fields would emanate charged particles that were charged simply by virtue of being the antiparticle when oppositely charged or spinning with vector motion defined in eigenvalue states, some superposition and others not. Particles were parts of a whole. A wave might be made of a multitude of particles. Waves were concatenated group behaviors of particles. Charges were directions of motion that, while theoretically reversible, could not do so without 2 times the opposite energy added and hence not really very reversible. Likewise did virtual particles rising from a field of absolute nothingness without charge exit nothingness to become actual rather than virtual particles without leaving a negative field charge. Subtracting something from nothingness created an unreal negative state in the vacuum. No matter, the evolutionary theorists were content with the place of their particular positions within the fields of their particular universes that they regarded as having arisen just through statistical laws of chance. Observations they had made concerning the tendency of disorganized particles to organize within any given volume with a stable state indicated to those without God that their own existence was inevitable and actually necessary considering the nature of mass and energy, particles, waves, strings, brains, and singularities. Even so, when the time of the age of the universes was fulfilled, after each people had the opportunity to contemplate being and to actualize their own particular works, after they had received and accepted or rejected the Word of God and been delivered to the Spirit, or to those without God, or to, let's see what happened to them. After each people had the opportunity to contemplate being and to actualize their particular works, after they had received and accepted or rejected the Word of God and been delivered to the Spirit or to the experience of eternity without the presence of God, and when they had been transliterated back from whatever quantum evolution state they had designated for their social and personal being. A little technical difficulties here. Back to their technical, for their social and personal being, and delivered to await judgment, the universes were concluded and rolled up coincidentally at the grand junction of forms. At the intersection of the 8 universes, corner edges subducted together under gravity to form a white hole through singularity. The white hole was zero-dimensional from the start, though it had information kept safe with Shannon, stop loss of data entropy, and the newly emergent universe appeared to have no data in it except for its implicit and minimal, yet necessary and deterministic physical structure. The structure was a field with bits of data appearing as zero, then one-dimensional points, lines, and segments, a membrane swiftly growing into quarks with a propensity toward fusion. The vast data of 8 universes disappeared with the physical content faster than light or the speed of gravity for an instant before exploding into the new universe, closing the singularity behind with a final soundless nothingness. Though matter and energy from the lost 8 universes was considered with transference and inflation into the singular new universe, the data was gone, hidden safely away from future residents of Universe 1 in a dark information field that was in yet not of the universe. The information content of the 8 universes could be infused, however, at the discretion of God regarding right time and place through strings and new quark relationships into the minds of mankind that for some reason, along with space, receiving dark energy and volume, served as live agents of change. Tremors from inexact coordinates reached gravity wave detectors across the star system within the heart of a 38 light-year in diameter section of the galaxy. Mass and energy were dissociated and disappeared. Hundreds of stars and tens of thousands of planets disappeared, leaving a void in their absence suddenly filled with dark space from a ball-shaped dimension upsurging into being. Space-time was pushed more than 900 light-years apart in an instant. John Dwight looked at the branch diagram outlining the lava tube ahead with little interest, distracted as he was with reflections on the methodical social economic veto of his self-interest objectives by supervening powers, illicitly. Nevertheless, the tube system below the surface of the moon of the main planet of the Diaphragm system required his attention if he was to complete a journey to a storage area for teacher robots with jigged programming unknown to the Aristarchs. A crusty, cruel coordinator for the Aristarch Department of Offense named Hard Carbon was hunting Dwight, receiving data and energy through his power anus from the Shenzhen float vehicle soft dope seat energy plug. Carbon followed a vaporous trace trail in the air over the subterranean tunnel network that brought yet to a relatively exostationary synchronization with the futile mole fugitive John Dwight scurrying, plinking below. Hard Carbon disdained the entire fugitive political dissident movement that sought reallocation of energy resources from the Aristarchs to the masses of individual poor poops. Energy, Carbon knew, could only be rationally allocated if in the control of the elites that owned all power and managed it righteously for the benefit of the righteous rich. Poor poops needed to be tolerated for conservation environmentally of their genetic base that could be exploited to assure the supremacy of the elites that govern development of the Silky Way galaxy. John Dwight made his way deeper through the lava tube coated throughout with glow light, creating a moderate bluish illumination for his eyes. After an hour of taking ecosphere moving trails through the silent, empty, variegated cylinder, he reached a drop shaft. The original inhabitants of the tube system had mined useful resources and deepened and expanded the network. The downlift was broke, and without any gel charge in the wire tubes to provide electrons for empowerment. He clipped a carabiner onto the one intact wire and used a magnetic wedge for a brake as he leapt into the darkness to slide a few hundred feet further down into the chamber his sonic ear had sounded. In a niche at the bottom of the main chamber was a pile of teacher robots, piled arms and legs akimbo like detritus moved out of the way by an auto skidder. Maybe this was the pile with artificial intelligence in an unnaturally altered state. Dwight wiped his brow with the back of a hairy hand and gave the first bot he reached a jolt of geltrons from a tube clipped magnetically to his servoderm. The artificial intelligence came to life with the light in its eyes. It spake thus, and so they reached the age of truth and reconciliation. The DNA of every member of society was freely submitted to the Public Identity Project, and the true parentage and genetic history of every member of society was mapped. Occupational percentages of progeny fathering was statistically discerned, and the members of the broadcast media were found to have an anomalously high factor of supramarital progenitor productivity, trailing only athletes and politicians in fecundity. Those elites were unhappy with publication of the results of their sexual prowess and quickly suppressed the results with the declaration of martial law because of a subversive terror revolt of poor distant poops. Yet that was just the start of the war to end mankind. Very soon, the elites discovered that their control of finance and energy provided absolute power politically. With genetic samples of all of humanity in their possession already through free, legal, mandatory public health provisions, humanity itself was superfluous. The genome of any particular individual could be grown, if required, for some reason in a human synthetic uterus, while computers with AI could run artificial evolution genomic recombinations simulating every possible genome that could ever have happened for humanity if humanity had continued to exist. It was thus that the first inhabitants of the lava tubes sought refuge from the pandemic conversion of humankind in the diaphragm system. They survived just a few diaphanous years before they were discovered and converted into the blood pool. Dwight turned the AI off and considered the surprising history of this remote and old outpost of the Twitium Empire that gave birth to the first Aristarchs of the Silky Way. As an ordinary poor poop, he became somewhat worried about his future prospect for security. Yet he was already distrustful of the Aristarchs. So what was new, really,